Hello, my name is Joe Kelly. I am the Community Relations Program host at the Rochester Hills Public Library, and I would like to welcome you all to this afternoon's presentation, the Curtis Taylor Duo, featuring Curtis Taylor on trumpet and Rick Rowe on piano, and performances of music from the Great American Songbook. We'd just like to take a moment to thank the Friends of the Rochester Hills Public Library for supporting our programs through their many fundraising efforts. We greatly appreciate their support. And any of you can register for our upcoming programs by visiting calendar.rhpl.org. And without further ado, I'm going to pass it right off to Curtis Taylor.
All right. Well, thank you so much, Joe. Appreciate you. Thank you guys so much for having me here. This is still an exciting opportunity. I know the pandemic and COVID has taken a lot of joy out of 2020, but it is an honor and a privilege to be here before you. What we have done, myself and my cohort, Mr. Rick Rowe, we have put together a very special performance lecture for you guys. And so we started doing performance lectures in the fall of 2015. And what they are basically is an edutainment experience. It's an experience that allows, library patrons like yourselves to participate in a more informal format. Many of you, at least pre-COVID times, would participate and go out to live music events. But obviously in that setting, you might not have an opportunity to ask any questions of a performer that you may have. These questions could range from, what do you think the current state of music is, or, where'd you grow up, or, how'd you get started playing your instrument? I don't want to micromanage you guys, have good questions, I'm sure. But it offers an opportunity for us to get to know the patrons of the library, and it offers an opportunity for the patrons of the library to get to know us. And at the end of an hour, you get some music, you get some information, and we all walk out, a lot better. So we had to move this, obviously because of COVID, we had to move the program to a virtual format. And so that's what we hope to do here today. Now I'm going to ask in advance for you guys to bear with me because I'm kind of the technologically, I'm manning all the technological wheels here. So I'm going to try to get the program underway shortly. I'll pop in and out between selections, and without further ado, here we go. Again, you're going to hear from myself on trumpet and Mr. Rick Rowe at the keyboard. This was recorded at the home of Rick Rowe, so we'd like to thank him for donating his space for this performance. And while the first selection is being played, I would like to invite everybody to think of some questions. Again, if you have a specific question about why we chose that song, or what inspired us to play that or play our instruments, anything like that. Obviously, it's just me here today, but that's what this program is. Just it's an informal performance lecture, so I want there to be some back and forth. And if you don't feel comfortable coming on camera, feel free to drop your questions in the chat. Okay, so here we go. Two. All righty. All right. We had got some comments that the volume was a little low. Can everybody hear me? Is this better? Just type down in the chat. All right. I got a thumbs up from Ron. Thank you for that thumbs up. Al Fisk asked, being a bone player, church MSU alumni band, I grew up loving Maynard, Chuck, Freddie, Doc, etc. He says he's old. I say you experienced. Who were your early influences? It's a great question. Now, my early influences, I studied at community college. I was fortunate. Actually, let me go back before that. Before that, I was fortunate enough to have music in the schools. And, I started in the band program in fifth grade. And by the way, shout out, my mom's actually on the call. So I always like to acknowledge her, Gwendolyn Taylor. So you guys show some applause and some hearts or whatever you can do for her here in this platform. But anyway, I grew up in Bedford, Ohio, and we had a band program in the fifth grade. And, I first got exposed to this music in the after school program, in about middle school, in about sixth, seventh grade. And, at first, actually, my first influences and my first exposure to this music was actually vocalists. One of the vocalists that I fell in love with right away was Ella Fitzgerald. And shortly after that, I began studying in a post-secondary enrollment options program in Cleveland, Ohio, at Tri-C. It's Cuyahoga Community College. And the gentleman that I was studying with at the time, Steve Enos, he was really into Chet Baker. And so Chet Baker was one of my earliest influences on the instrument. And I really appreciate that because Chet had such a sensibility on his instrument for melody and phrasing. And also, as a beginning trumpet player, Chet Baker's, what he would do on the actual physical instrument was so accessible. A lot of times we listen to technicians, on the instrument like Freddie Hubbard and Clifford Brown and Lee Morgan and even Louis Armstrong. And of course, they're the greats and we have to study them. But a lot of times when we're first picking up the instrument, because of the physicality of the trumpet, it's difficult to be able to transcribe or access, some of the things that those people are playing. But Chet Baker was able to be melodic and succinct in, a very specific amount of range. His solos typically don't go too high like a Maynard Ferguson or a Cat Anderson would. And so he was my first influence. Then from there, of course, the classics, Louis Armstrong, of course, Clifford Brown, Freddie Hubbard, Lee Morgan, and then the newer guys to come, Nicholas Payton and Roy Hargrove. So those were my influences. Kind of a long way to answer your question, but I kind of wanted to make sure that I rooted it and everybody understood where I was coming from. Al, you met Chet? Wow, nice. Wow, yeah, that's amazing. I wish I would have got an opportunity to meet him. I think I was 4 years old when he passed. I believe he died in 1988 or 89. So, great question. Don't be shy, guys. I know this could be strange, but we got enough people on here to get some questions. Even you, Joe. I know you're co-host, but and we have Donna joining us here. Welcome. No more questions? How about the first song? Nothing? All right, we'll play another one. All right, so this next composition is, let me see what I have up here, actually, is one by one of my favorite trumpet players. and that is Freddie Hubbard. And this one is entitled Up Jump Spring. All right, can you hear me? Let's see. Hello. All right, it's a lot to run, guys, so bear with me. Looks like Al has another question. So you guys are going to let Al monopolize this whole conversation. Is that what's going to happen here? Is that really what's going to go on? I love it, Al. Well, thank you for being involved. I appreciate you, man. You say love Freddie Hubbard's Skydive. It's a great tune. What do you think about Miles Davis playing with his back to the crowd? Um, Miles was a character, to say the least. You know, he's somebody that he can get away with so much because he changed the face of music like 5 times. He was there in the early days in the bebop era with somebody like Charlie Parker. And then toward the end of his career, I mean, he was collaborating with people like Sly and the Family Stone. So, I mean, and everybody, pretty much everybody that was in his band went on to do very well in this music. People like Herbie Hancock, Marcus Miller. I mean, the list goes on and on of, everybody that played in his band. So as far as, Miles playing with his back to the audience, if anybody could get away with it, I think Miles could get away with it. I'll leave it there. I wouldn't necessarily try it, but Miles could do it. Anybody else? Any other questions?
I actually did have a question.
Yeah, go ahead.
We
Hold on,
we
let me make sure I have
Go ahead.
audio for you. Okay, go ahead.
We already have seen here like that provides unique challenges performing music and presenting to an audience now during quarantine. I'm curious if
Yeah.
there's anything that you've learned from adapting to this experience and about connecting to your audience, about performing that you think you might carry forward even beyond.
Well, I mean, the obvious, what we're doing right now, the technology piece. And as you see, I'm learning. I mean, every time I do a Zoom session, I'm learning. I teach. Everything's virtual now. Obviously, most of our gatherings are virtual. I teach at California State University, San Marcos, and obviously my class meetings are virtual. And I learned something every day. The hardest thing, though, is making music virtually. Thankfully, we're still able to kind of hack the system a little bit and record outside, and people can mask up and socially distance themselves, and so that kind of allows us a little bit of a hack. But as we enter cooler climates and winter months, that's going to become more and more difficult. Now, I will say that I had the great pleasure of performing at the Detroit Jazz Festival during Labor Day weekend, and that was actually indoors. But I mean, there were a slew of protocols in place for that to happen. Temperature checks every day in and out of the hotel. I mean, if you would go out of a room to go to the bathroom and then come back into the room, it didn't matter. You had to get your temperature checked again, even if you were just in the room. They would have rehearsal rooms, and they would have times where they couldn't have anybody in the rehearsal rooms for like an hour between groups, just to make sure that there was nothing lingering in the air. Obviously everybody in the building had to wear masks. So it's quite an undertaking, to say the least. But I think people are resilient, and I think musicians are creative, and we're figuring this out. And I'm sure new technologies are being created as we're speaking to continue to bridge these gaps that we have, because a lot of gaps were exposed when we all had to go to virtual and try to make music. Great question. Al Fisk says again, he says your college roommate was a jazz trumpeter. Ever play with, I hope I'm saying this right, Zanjik, Clue, or James? No, I have not had the pleasure of playing with those gentlemen. I know Clue and James, but I'm not sure who the first person. I don't want to assume that they're a gentleman, but I'm not sure who the first person is that you're referring to. Alexander. Okay. Yeah, I'm not familiar. Anybody else? How about you guys? How has it been? Have you guys been able to attend virtual concerts? And how's this been for you guys? I'd like to hear from the actual audience. Kind of do a little crowd testing. Again, and feel free to light up the chat if you don't feel comfortable coming on camera. Anybody? Everybody's so shy. This actually happens in person, so this is this is true to form, actually. All right, well, we'll keep the music going. We're going to play another composition. Let me see what I have up next for you guys. Oh, this is great. This is a great, beautiful ballad entitled "You Don't Know What Love Is." Again, bear with me on the sound here. It's got a lot of going on. All right, we're back. Thank you guys so much. What an experience, huh? Also, like to acknowledge I got another mom figure on. Miss Fonda Brewer is in the house. So I'd like to thank her for tuning in. We really appreciate her. Looks like Al has all the questions. Ever play flugelhorn? Nah, a little bit in the beginning. Flugelhorn, for those of you who don't know, um, it's basically one of those, it's kind of a cousin to trumpet. And it's usually played a lot for more lush ballad and slow and like a song that we just played. That would be a great song for flugelhorn. Freddie Hubbard played a lot of flugelhorn. Um, Chuck Mangione in the smooth jazz world, he played a lot of flugelhorn. It's a great instrument. I haven't actually played much flugelhorn, but I'm fortunate that I have a very dark trumpet sound naturally. So while I don't play flugelhorn, I feel like I can elicit those moods, especially when I'm playing a slow song. So, but it's on the list. Trust me, it is definitely on the list. When I find the right fit, I'll definitely get a flugelhorn. Let's see. I have another question. Is there any classic piece that you find yourself always going back to play or experiment with, or one that hit you differently than it did the first time you went on? It's a good question. I was talking about this actually when we were recording for this program today with Rick Rowe. I was talking about Thelonious Monk's Round Midnight, and that's another beautiful ballad. Um, I was basically talking about it from the standpoint of I remember learning this very early on in my matriculation as a student, and before I had a lot of knowledge about theory and harmony and all of the pieces parts, if you will, that make you a great musician and that allow you to be competent in the music. And I just fell in love with just the melody of the song. I remember that, and something about the simplicity of just playing a melody to a song and really appreciating that. um, it's kind of hard to get back to that space and place once you have more knowledge. It's kind of like the more you know, the more you need to know. So um, yeah, I just sometimes it's difficult to get back to that simplistic place, and I miss it, sometimes. So you know I'm trying to find a way, even though I am further along obviously in my development than those years ago, but I want to fall in love with melodies again and harmony. And it still happens. I mean, it's not like that never happens, but I remember when that was pretty much all I had, just the melody of a song that was, very special time. So that was the conversation that we had, when we recorded this, actually. Great question. Anybody else on here? Do I got to start calling people out like in my class? So we got Mary Jean. Ann's on here. Who else do we got in here? Mom's in here, of course. No questions for mom? I guess you get all the inside scoop anyway, huh? Alan, Donna, Ron, of course, Al. You've been saving us, man. You've been saving the program. Thank you, Al. Nobody? All right. Well, I guess we'll play another one. Here we go. This one, let me see what I got here for you guys. This one is by Herbie Hancock. And this one is, let's see, this one is entitled Cantaloupe Island. A second here. All right, guys, we're back. Let me look at the chat here, see what we got. Thanks, Mom. Mom chimed in finally. Appreciate that. Al, what a surprise. I've never been able to master double or triple tongue. Just can't do it. You? Actually, I haven't really spent much time on it either. It's just one of those things, like anything, honestly, if you spend enough time on it, I feel like you'll get it. Uh, you know, just with learning any skill, there's varying rates of at which, a person can learn a particular skill, it just depends on the person. Might take one person 10 hours, might take one person 10 minutes, I don't think that's going to be the case with trumpet or mastering double or triple tonguing, but who knows? There's a story of the trombonist Wyclef Gordon literally practicing it without his horn in the car on the way to a gig, and apparently he got it down, on the way to a gig. So there you go. So maybe it's possible. My buddy Joe here at Rochester, he says, what were some differences in learning how to perform music and learning how to teach music? Did teaching music to others influence how you thought of music at all. Absolutely. I feel like with like any skill. Once you learn something, you're going to learn it on a deeper level if you have to explain it to somebody. So it's actually advantageous for us, if we want to learn something on a really deep level to actually, try to explain it to somebody. So absolutely, in my learning, I learned it, like for instance, music theory is something that is very important to have together if you want to, have a sustainable career. I feel like in the music, or an understanding at least. And you know, I felt like I had a pretty good grasp of it. But in my time, just having to teach it to other people, you encounter things that you may not have encountered when you're actually learning the material. So it causes you to have to, break it down on a molecular level, to say, hey, well, what does that mean? Or, hey, I never thought about that, or I was never asked that question. So you might have to do some more research. So I find that happening all the time in my classes, so I just try to look at teaching as an opportunity to share information, not necessarily I may know more about a particular topic because I've spent more time on it, but I'm just sharing information with people. And you can always learn something from everybody if you're paying attention. Anybody else? Al? How about Donna, Ron, Alan? Haven't heard from you guys. Are you still there? Mary Jean, Ann? Fonda Brewer. She asked, how did it feel getting, oh, you're lobbing me a softball? Oh, that's what family's for, I guess. Um, how did it feel winning a Grammy with Gregory Porter? It felt great. It was great to be a part of. She's speaking of the project. I was a part of the jazz vocalist Gregory Porter's Liquid Spirit. It was his third album, and that project won a Grammy. He goes on to win, I think, two more Grammys on other projects. And it was great being in the studio recording it. I remember when we were recording that project, just thinking that the music was very accessible, and it spoke to the stories of human beings. And so I feel like from a writing perspective, whenever you do that with your music, if you can find a way to connect to the humanity of the people that are going to be listening to your music, it's going to do well, you know. Um, Sometimes it might not do well like politically, because getting a Grammy is more than just an album sounding great. There's a lot of things that happen behind the scenes, and there's a lot of politics involved in getting a Grammy award. But you know most Grammy award winning albums are good albums, or great albums. So I would say that, I'm just looking forward to actually winning a Grammy for my own project. So looking forward. Coming soon. Thanks for the softball. Donna Stash says, where are you located? Do you ever play jazz in Detroit? Great city for jazz. Currently, I'm actually quarantining in the Midwest with my family during this time of COVID. I've been here. I have a 2-year-old son as of Monday. And, I've been here pretty much since the beginning of COVID. And, before that, I was in Southern California. And yes, I do play in Detroit. And actually, we just performed at the Detroit Jazz Festival Labor Day weekend. So that was a great opportunity, especially during this time, because as people know, there are not a lot of opportunities to perform, you know, during this time. So we're grateful for each and every one of them. Great question. Donna, congrats on the baby. Cliff Bells. Yep, I've played Cliff Bells many times, and thank you for the congrats on the baby. Yeah, I played Cliff Bells many times. Cliff Bells is for people who are familiar with Detroit. It's right down there in by Comerica Park, and it's a great club, a really big club, and has a very nice clientele in turn, people that come in and out from the games, and you can make reservations. It's a very nice date night spot. I think they just started live music up. Obviously everything shut down at the beginning of COVID, but now they're starting to have some live music events, um, kind of here and there. So I know people are excited about that, and they've been doing them safe, but I'm not sure how long they're going to be going on, but I'm sure the music community will take it as long as it can get it. Al, Bakers. Yes, I have played Bakers. It's been a while. I went to Michigan State University. I was in school at Michigan State from 2003 to 2007. And during that time period, I did spend a lot of time in Detroit performing at all the local haunts. So I performed at Bakers, Cliff Bell's, Burt's Marketplace, and a host of others I'm sure I'm leaving out, but those were definitely mainstays during that time period. Yeah, yeah, I'm a young guy. Well, not as young as I used to be. I'm still a papa, 35. Fonda asks, what was the trumpet your first favorite musical instrument? Actually, this is a great story behind this. I actually wanted to play the saxophone first, but we had just moved to the area that we moved in Ohio, and Mom can speak to this. I've told this story a million times, so she's probably sick of hearing it. But yeah, so basically, I wanted to play the saxophone. The saxophone was going to be way too expensive, especially for somebody that you're not sure is going to be serious about playing a musical instrument. That's a serious investment. So at the time, my band director recommended that maybe, trying trumpet would be an option because it was a lot more, affordable for a beginning music student that is maybe not going to stick with it. So we went that route. So my destiny was formed and chose for me. So could be a different story if I played the saxophone. Could have given it up years ago. Who knows? So great question. I always love that one. Al says Baker's is too small. It's cozy. Yeah, I think that's what they're going for. So yeah. All right. Well, we got some mileage out of that one. Thank you guys. We definitely got some mileage out of that one. So let's see. We got a little bit more time. I know we need to wrap up here. Is it okay if we go over a little bit? Is that okay with
Yeah, that's
everybody?
fine.
I know we're supposed to be done with 1 hour program. Is anybody gonna have any aversion to us going over a little bit? Okay, Donna gave me the go ahead, guys. Okay, so if you got to go, I understand, but we're going to play one more composition for you. I'd like to thank everybody for tuning in. Thank you so much, Rochester, for having me. This has been great to share some music during this time. Everybody needs music. Please take this opportunity to, Google and find out if there's any live music or any virtual programming that is going on. As artists, we need your support more now than ever. Of course, I have music on all digital platforms. You can go to my website, www.curtistaylor.net, and you can buy albums and listen to music directly from the site. If you'd like to know more about Rick Rowe, he has a website as well. You could just type his name right on into Google, and he has many albums. I would encourage you to support him as well. Just uh, and a phenomenal musician. So without further ado, we're going to play our last composition. And this is by the late, great Charlie Parker, the bebop master. And this one, we get into some fun, and it's a fast one. And this one is entitled Marmaduke. Thank you. Thank you guys so much for tuning in. I want to thank the Rochester Hills Public Library one more time for having us. It's been an honor and a privilege to give you this virtual performance lecture this afternoon. You guys take care. Joe, any final words, anything before we end the
Yeah,
broadcast?
sure. I just also like to say, first off, you're welcome. And also thank you very much for this wonderful performance, for getting to engage with everyone. And we thank you all for coming out and taking a chance to participate in our program. Like, we really appreciate it. And we hope you will join us for future programs. And we're very grateful to have you. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Bye.